Okay, g'day folks and welcome back. So tonight I'm going to carry on a bit further from the video I did earlier today, and that was all about how you're going to make sure the crane remains stable I'm going to carry on about what I did earlier, which is how we're going to make sure the crane remains stable. Alright, now we covered the two main aspects to make sure it remains stable, and that is making sure it's set up right as per manufacturer specs and not overloading the crane. Now when we spoke about not overloading the crane, it was not just about the capacities of the crane, but also taking into account things like wind load and shock loading. Alright, so when we talk about shock loading, what exactly do we mean? So whenever you operate a crane or move a crane, alright, every time the crane or the load moves, it's going to create dynamic force. Now, dynamic force is just force created by movement of the crane or load. Now, that force could be over a long period of time, which it typically is, but if you put all that into a short period of time, that then counts as shock loading. Now, what that's going to do, it's going to overload the crane, overload your lifting gear, it's going to put stress on your lifting gear, and the chances of dropping loads, you're going to have uncontrolled movement. Alright, and lots of nasty things can happen when you're doing that. Alright, so when we talk about the cranes tonight, if you do have any questions, if you are going to do a crane course soon, alright, it's pretty important to know about those sorts of things. Alright, so if you are currently doing one or you're about to start one, you've been given some homework to cover off before you go into the course, and there's anything you want a little bit of clarification on, just drop us a line at any time and we'll see if we can't put you on the right path. Alright, so now unfortunately nowadays there are too many cranes going over, and look, I've always said there's two main reasons that a crane is going to tip over. One is that either the people aren't trained properly, so they're not aware of what they're doing wrong, which hopefully if they do get enough training that won't happen. And the other one is because you do get cowboys in industry. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, you're always going to come across some cowboys. Okay, and the crane industry is no different. So you are going to come across those cowboys, and they're the ones you don't want to work with, all right? Because they're not just putting their own life at risk, they're putting everyone else's life at risk as well. Okay, so while I'm talking, if you do have any questions to ask, just pop on at any time and have a look. Okay, so what do we do in the crane course? So the crane course does involve a lot of theory, all right? So unfortunately the crane course is, depending where you are, it's either 4 days or 5 days, and in that period 2 of those days are going to be your practical and your theory assessments, which only really leaves you 1 or 2 or 3 days to cover off all that theory, and there's a hell of a lot of it. And in these videos I'm doing, I do try and cover off as much of what I can that's covered in that theory. So if you keep watching these videos, you're going to pick up a few little hints and tips along the way as well. Alright, so if you have been doing any and there's anything you are stuck on, don't be scared to drop us a line. Alright, okay, who have we got? Got a question up straight away. Alright, that's good to see. How do you determine the center of gravity of a load before lifting? Alright, now while some loads may have the center of gravity marked on them, and if you're asked that in a assessment, that's probably your easiest answer, it could be marked on the load. Look, realistically, what you're going to do in the real world is you're going to have a look at the load, and you're going to tell just by looking at it which end is heavier compared to the other. Right, and then it's just a trial run. The heavier end, or the end you perceive as being heavier, shorten those links on those chains a bit and give it a test lift. All right. Now, if there's a problem with the test lift, all you've got to do is put it down, readjust the slings, and you can do another test lift. All right. So they're the two easiest ways. So it could be marked on the load, or you can just essentially look at it, shorten your chains up, and do a test lift. Okay, what do we got now? The pitch quality is good. picture quality is good, consider getting a couple of lights. Alright, so one thing I have done is I have noticed on a few of my last live streams the quality has been pretty poor actually. So I've actually grabbed the GoPro out and I've figured out how to set that up as a webcam, and I'm hoping the video quality is a bit better than what it has been anyway. As for lights, I reckon you're probably all better off I'm in the dark so you don't have to look at my ugly mug all night. Okay, no worries, big dreams, anytime at all. I'm willing to answer any questions to do with the cranes or the rigging. Because as I said, there is a lot of information. Now, I will give you a bit of advice. Most courses you go to, you're going to get some pre-course materials from your RTO. Make sure you study it because, like I said, you don't have a lot of time in the classroom to get through it. The more you can get covered before you start, the better off you're all going to be. All right. Now, it's all about repetition when you're learning stuff. Just go over it and go over it and sort of get into it. Because the more you can study at home, then hopefully the more chance you'll get to actually sit in the crane rather than covering stuff you should have already learnt. And the more seat time you get, the better off it's going to be for everyone. It's not like it was back in the day when I did mine, where we essentially ran logbooks. So enrolled in the course, got issued a logbook, and went out on site and got the time up in the crane, which gave us a lot more time in the crane, which is always to your benefit when you're actually out there. Right. As I've said many times before, none of these courses are actually long enough. Right. It's really just a license so you can start learning. Right. But what you do have to remember is just because you've got the license, it doesn't mean that you can drive every crane out there. So for example, if you're going to go get a C6 license, while you're licensed to drive everything up to and including a 60 tonner, you will still need to be trained in each machine that you actually operate. If you learn to drive in a Zoomline or an XCMG or a Tadano or a Liebherr or a Terex, alright, doesn't mean you know how to drive all the others. They are all completely different. So if you just have a quick look at a couple of videos I've done on the, well, I've recently done one on the lower cab of Liebherr, and I have also done one on the setup of a Zoomline. And just looking at those two videos, you can see they are actually completely different. Right? I'm actually hoping to get out there and finish that video on the Liebherr so we can go through the full setup process and look at the top cab as well. Alright, but that comes to getting time off to actually do it as well. Okay, Kelvin, do a test lift for centre of gravity. Yep, well that's always the best way. Even if you're not sure, the test lift is going to confirm it for you. And as I said earlier, if there is a problem with the test lift, put it back down, adjust your slings, and then do another test lift. Right, you always get a fair idea when you look at something where the centre of gravity is going to be. So for example, if you're lifting a car, you know the centre of gravity is going to be more towards the bonnet, right? Just because you've got that motor at the front as well. Right, so the centre of gravity is one of the most critical things. Look, realistically, before you lift any load, there's three key things you need to know. Now, I don't care if it's just a standard load or if it's some special or a unique load. The three things you will always want to know about it is A, the weight of it, all right? Because unless you know the weight, how will you know what size slings you're going to use? So you're going to need to know the weight of the load. You're going to need the centre of gravity of the load, and you're also going to need to take into account the safe lifting points, right? So you're not going to sling anything. So, for example, go back to the car. You're not going to lift a car using the mirrors, obviously, because they're going to break, right? So you need to know where those safe lifting points are as well. All right. How can I get your course, sir? I started a career in crane operation and rigging. All right. So, big dreams. Well, first question, are you in Australia? That would be the main thing. Look, now, currently I am back training again. I'm working for a company here in Melbourne. So if you do want to know, look, what I try and avoid doing while I'm doing these broadcasts is mention the actual company I'm working for. Now that's done deliberately, and the reason for that is I've got a lot of training videos out there and I want to make them accessible for any students anywhere across the country or the world for that matter. But if I start advertising the company that I work for, some of the other RTOs that I do know are using my videos, they'll stop using the videos and the students won't get the benefit of it. All right, so that's the main reason I try to avoid doing that. All right, I am hoping very shortly to start running some of my own courses as well. And as soon as I do that, I will actually put it up on my webpage. So if you don't know the address of the webpage, it's KIERAN'S.com.au. All right, so you'll find a link to it on my YouTube page as well. All right, so if you are in Melbourne and you're looking to get some courses done, I am hoping to run some of my own courses very shortly in conjunction with a local RTO. All right, so just keep an eye out on there, or if you want to get your name down for any future courses, just send us a DM or send us a message via my webpage. All right, and look, most of those courses that I'm going to be doing there too are going to be over the weekends as well. All right, because running it through an RTO, obviously they're busy all the time during the week, and the only real times I'm going to be doing it is, or be available, is over the weekends. Now that will be predominantly be dogging and rigging courses, C6 courses. Hopefully too, we will soon I'll start doing some CO courses as well out on site. So if you've got a few of you together that need a CO license, then I'll be able to get out there and do that for you as well. Okay, all right. Must be a bit of a lag in this because I'm pretty sure I just covered that. Yeah, so what I'm hoping to be delivering is dogging, basic rigging, intermediate rigging, and C6 to start with. And look, there's always going to be the opportunity for boom lift, forklift, all that sort of thing. Now it depends what the how much demand I get, right? Whether but look, even if I'm not doing it myself, I'm sure I can hook you up with something to sort you out as well. All right. Now, because the one thing I will never do is recommend anyone or anything that I don't approve of. All right. So I'm not going to put you with someone who's dodgy, who's going to do something dodgy. I'll make sure that if you are looking to do something, I'll try and line you up with something that's going to suit your needs. Okay. How long should you work in a basic rigger before you go for an intermediate ticket? Awesome. Great question. Now, look, while there is no actual limit, legally you can go for it the very next week. Now, the dogging and the basic rigging, I don't mind them going hand in hand because they tend to work together a lot. Right? But when it comes down to intermediate rigging, now in intermediate rigging, because you're doing things like tilt panels, and look, tilt panels have killed a lot of people over the years. You'll be doing demolition work, you'll be building cranes and putting cranes together as well. So I would always recommend at least a minimum of 12 months under the hook, getting some sort of experience before you go for that intermediate ticket. Like I said, I can't control it if you do want to go for it the next week, but I would highly advise against it. All right. And at the end of the day, look, when you're actually doing the courses, strangely enough, I find the intermediates probably the easiest to do, because by that stage, most people have got some sort of experience as it is anyway. All right, so hope that answers your question on that one. Look, as with any courses, don't go rushing through them. Do it right, treat it like a long-term occupation, and you'll find you'll be a lot better at the job. If you try and rush through, you're going to end up thinking you know everything in a short period of time, and you'll probably find you'll know less than anyone else. All right. Okay. All right. No worries, Kevin. Hope that helps. All right. So, and the same goes for crane licenses as well. Look, I don't know what it is. I don't know if people are just money hungry or whatever the case may be, but you get a lot of people, they get their dogging license one week and the next week they want to be driving a crane. Right? You don't want to be driving a crane until you get that experience under the hook. All right? Because ultimately you're responsible for that lift when it goes up in the air, and you want to make sure you have a good, thorough understanding of what's happening out there. The way things are at the moment, You get a lot of green riggers out there, you get a lot of labour hire riggers out there that may not quite understand the job so well. They get thrown in the deep end. So somebody on the job has to have an idea of what's going on, and that should be the crane operator, because he should always get the final say. Right? Now, in saying that, if the rigger sees something that's unsafe, he is perfectly able to stop the job as well. All right? As a matter of fact, anyone on site can stop a job if they see something that is unsafe. Okay, so how are we going there? All right, excuse me. Just starting to feel a bit hoarse there. All right. So, do we have any more questions about any of the high risk licensing? Okay, or anything along those lines? All right. So, look, I've said it previously, my background is, look, I started working off as a shearer, got into the dogging and rigging, and sort of worked my way up into the cranes as well. Right. Now, the whole reason behind these videos was students were struggling with some of the practical aspects. So, and they were watching some dodgy videos out there, which were giving them misinformation. So the whole reason of doing these videos was to help those students, so they've got something to go back and watch while they're not in class. All right. It's pretty easy to study the theory side, but trying to do the practical side is a lot more difficult. So at least it gives them that visual as well while they're doing that. Okay, apparently traffic will be a high risk license later this year. Can't say I've actually heard. I do know they are changing all the rules for traffic management. I haven't heard of it becoming a high risk license yet though. The ones I do know they're looking at, and hopefully the sooner the better, is they are looking at a telehandler high risk license. Now, the sooner they get that out, the better, because the telehandler is nothing like a crane. Yet at the moment you have to have a CN license to operate a telehandler that's 3 tonne or above. Okay, now just quickly on that, I've had a student last week that was telling me his safety officer said you can drive the bigger telehandler with forks on if you've got a forklift license. That's totally incorrect. Doesn't matter what attachment you have on that telehandler. If it's above 3 tonne, you've got to have a CN license, right? So the sooner they bring out a telehandler license, the better off it's going to be. It's going to clear up a lot of grey areas for everyone. And I believe the other thing I know that WorkSafe are looking at is taking off, for example, the boom lift above 11 metres. They want to take off that above 11 metres component and just make it boom lift, which to me makes perfect sense because you're just as likely to kill yourself at 10 metres as you are 11. All right, so I don't see why there's a difference for the licence there. All right, and I believe that may even go across to the CV licence, which is your vehicle loading cranes, which is at currently 10 tonne metres or above, and I believe they're looking at that one as well. All right, so there are going to be changes, but typically nothing changes too quickly. But personally, as far as the telehandler course goes, I reckon they can't get that one out soon enough. Okay, wouldn't telehandler be equivalent to Frenner non-slow? Well, that's the license you do need for a telehandler at the moment, your CN. All right, but the actual driving of a telehandler is absolutely nothing like driving a Frenner. All right, they are completely different machines. Okay, so that's why they do need to be taken off that crane license and put on its own. Okay, because what we have now is we have a lot of people going to do a crane license to go and drive a telehandler. Now, it's all good in theory, except no one knows what's going to happen 3 or 4 years down the line. All right, so they've sat in a Frenner for a few days to do a course, go off to work, drive a telehandler. They've now got a crane license, so in 3 or 4 years they may be on a project. That project finishes. They see a job advertised for a Frenner driver, and they think, let's jump in that. I've got a license for it. The Frenner is actually, well, I should stop saying Frenner. I should keep saying non-slew crane. All right, because it doesn't matter if it's a Frenner, if it's a Hummer, if it's a TID. Okay, whatever non-slew crane you have, right? Because they articulate, they are a lot more dangerous. All right, they're a lot more dangerous than any slewing crane, because at least on a slewing crane, you've got your outriggers supporting you. Whereas if you're on a non-slew crane, you've just got the tyres, all right, and tyres can give way, right? So, and that's compounded by the fact that Frenners are usually the first crane that most people get into. So you have the most inexperienced people in the most dangerous cranes, all right? The other aspect I believe WorkSafe are looking at, don't quote me on this, but what I've heard is they are looking at taking the CN license off that hierarchy. So at the moment, if you get a C6 license, it means you can drive a CN as well, or a non-slew crane. I believe they're taking it off so that a CN will be a standalone, so you do get that specific training, which is great because you should have that specific training. If you are currently driving a C6 or you're looking at getting a C6 license so you can drive a CN, just remember before you jump in that machine that your employer still needs to give you information, training, supervision and instruction to make sure that you're competent to drive it. All right, it's still the employer's responsibility to make sure that you're competent to drive it, and that does mean you just hold the license, because as I said previously, holding the license doesn't mean you can drive every machine in that class. Right, so whenever you get a job, your employer has to make sure that you're also competent to do that, and they'll generally do that by conducting a VOC. All right, so you can get VOCs for each individual machine you drive, and you should also get a VOC for dogging or rigging. Keep in mind those VOCs, okay, especially if it's for dogging and rigging. So for machines, they're machine specific. Now when you look at the dogging and rigging VOCs, they should be task specific for what you're doing on the job as well. Right, so we'll take basic rigging for example. In basic rigging, there's a whole heap of different stuff you do in the practical. So in a practical assessment, you'll set up static lines, you'll set up safety nets, you'll erect and dismantle structural steel, you'll install CCLPs or cantilever crane loading platforms, you'll set up winches, you'll erect and dismantle structural steel, you'll place concrete panels, and you'll install and remove safety shutters. Now that's a lot of things to remember. Now if you go through and do basic rigging and, sorry, I did forget one, materials hoist. You got to erect and dismantle a materials hoist. I think I've got that all covered. Alright, so if you go get your basic rigging license and you go doing a job and you're erecting materials hoists, then there's no point doing a VOC for that job where they're talking about erecting structural steel, because that's not what you're doing on that job. So if you're doing a VOC for a job, it should be specific to the task you're actually performing on that job. All right. Now I do know some companies out there, they have their national VOCs to cover dogging and basic rigging. I've got a couple of good examples on the computer, but I'm not going to bring them up. But some of the questions I ask on it, no one will ever actually know the answer to. All right. They're not task specific to what they're doing, and unless you did your rigging license over 20 years ago, which is where they got some of those questions from, riggers aren't taught it. All right, so whenever you do that stuff, you've got to make sure it's more task specific. All right, but that is the employer's responsibility to make sure that you're competent in what you're doing. All right. Okay, so do we have any more questions out there? Okay, excuse me. All right, so heard telehandler might be changing into a high-risk work license. Yep, that's exactly what I was just explaining. All right, and look, the sooner they do it, the better. Now, with the telehandler, the problem is there are so many different attachments you can get to it. You can put on buckets, you can put on tines, you can put a jib on. Okay, there's a whole heap of different attachments. All right, so you need to know how to operate each one that you're actually going to be using. All right. Now, I'm not sure how they're going to do it with the license when it comes out. I'm sure they'll get you to use a couple of attachments at least a jib and a set of forks, I'd imagine. But the sooner they do bring that out, the better. All right. Okay. All right. So, any more questions about the cranes or the rigging? Well, how many we got on there at the moment? We've got a few on there at the moment. Oh, excuse me. All right. So, as I said, hopefully I'll be delivering some of my own courses soon. And if that happens, I'll be looking forward to hopefully getting some of yous out there. All right. So, if we've got no questions asked, I'll ask one. So, the people we currently got on, whereabouts are you from? Anyone from Melbourne or anyone from overseas at all? Okay, just having a look. Okay. No. All right. So, we'll go back to talking about the crane courses. Actually, no, what I'll do is I'll tell you what I'm hoping to do this week. Because this week I'm actually running a basic rigging course. What I want to do is I want to get a few quick videos of each day of what we actually do, so you can know what to expect during the course. All right. So I'll try and cover a little bit of what each day is going to cover. Am I starting my own RTO? Not a chance. All right. The problem with that is way too much compliance. All right. I'm not a big fan of paperwork at the best of times, so I'm definitely not looking to run my own RTO. But I will be trying to deliver some courses with in conjunction with an RTO. So under the auspice of a different RTO, so that we can run the courses. All right, using all their materials, etc. Okay. Yeah. I have thought about starting an RTO at one point, but as I said, not a fan of all that paperwork, and there is a hell of a lot of it when it comes to dealing with all the different government agencies such as ASQA and WorkSafe and all of the rest of it. Okay, so got Kelvin in southeast Melbourne. All right, Jaden's in Melbourne as well. All right, got a few from Melbourne. All right, who knows, might see you in one of my courses in the near future. Okay, so as I was saying, this week, each day of the course, I'll try and get some short videos, and I'll put it all together at the end of the week and just have a basic rundown of what you can expect when you do come to one of these courses. Okay, now with basic rigging, look, you're going to have the advantage you've already done dogging, so you've got some sort of idea. Right? It's usually those that come into dogging that seem to struggle the most, and that's because they really don't know what to expect. But if you are looking at doing dogging, you can still see what we're going to do in the basic rigging, and it's the same sort of system. We cover off all the theory, we cover off the calculations, etc. Okay, what qualifications do we need to put a sock on a wire rope from Geelong or Melbourne? Alright, look, I would say to put the sock on a wire rope, it means you're putting I'm guessing that you're going to be pulling the wire rope onto a winch or through a system like a stacker or a reclaimer or something like that. So if you're going to be pulling it, basic rigging would be at least a minimum for it. But if you are setting up the winch, as in pulling things through, putting a crawler together and you're pulling the ropes through on the crawler, that will definitely be intermediate rigging. Right, so it's going to come down to what you're actually doing with why you're putting the sock on it. Generally it's because you're pulling the rope through, but what are you pulling the rope through for? If you're just pulling it onto a winch, all right, then you could do that as a basic rigger. If you're going to be operating the winch or if you're setting up a crane, working on conveyor systems is another reason you may do it. That would definitely come under your intermediate. Okay. Now, the problem with changing ropes on cranes, then you'll be looking at intermediate. Okay, so look, the task involved in intermediate. So intermediate is if you're dealing with excavators, cranes, conveyor systems, doing tilt panels, doing dual lifts, doing demolition work, all right, all comes under the auspice of intermediate rigging. Okay, so when you're looking at that, intermediate's what you've got to be looking at. All right. Okay, now as I was saying, with the dogging is what most people struggle with, but if you watch the videos I'm going to hopefully do this week, things don't always turn out the way I wanted to, but I'll hopefully put that together by the end of the week. And even though it's basic rigging, it's the same sort of system: theory, calculations, practical, followed by the assessments at the end. I actually enjoy training the dogging because I find when you're doing dogging, you grab people when they're at the start before they've developed any bad habits, and you can sort of lead them along in the right direction as well. All right, because what I have found, unfortunately, is not all trainers should be training. I'll put it nicely. Yeah, I won't go too far into that. It's probably not a good idea. But you do get some that don't know quite as many as others that do have workplace experience, so they don't get as much out of it. Right? While I do have some other licenses I don't train them for a reason. So the classic one is basic scaffolding. I've had that license for close to 20 years now, but I won't train it for the simple fact I haven't done that as a job, and I don't have any value to pass on to the student. Well, yes, I could probably go through the answers, explain a bits and pieces to you. I can't pass on any practical knowledge I've learned in the workforce. So you as a student, you're not going to get anything out of it. You may as well read a book, right? So I'm a firm believer that you should never train unless you've had that experience doing it. And while it is a prerequisite, honestly, I don't know how some of them actually do get past that milestone. All right. Okay. There we go. All right. So changing. All right. So any more questions out there? No? All right. Now don't forget, if you are going to be looking at doing some courses in the near future, all right, I do have that whole backlog of videos as well. Now, pretty much most of the videos are all aimed at helping the students. So whatever aspects of whatever course you're doing, whether it be dogging, basic, intermediate, CN, C6, C1, CO, I've got videos on all of them. All right. Okay, what's the worst accident you've seen on site? All right. Now, that's something I don't want to get too much into, all right, because, well, okay, so the worst thing that I have seen on site is a 40-ton pick and carry crane, not a Frenner, but it was, well, there are only two of them ever made. End up going over and the boom landed on a poor fellow who was off to the side doing a completely different job. All right. Now, I have my thoughts on that, and I'm not going to go into it because I will get myself into trouble if I say what I believe. All right. But like I said, two biggest causes of accidents was lack of training. The bloke driving the crane was trained, and there's cowboys. All right. Remember, always do everything you can to do a job safely. Right, if you've got a better alternative, take that better alternative. Okay, do you think there's any point getting advanced rigging ticket? My basic rigger said that when companies start laying off people, they'll keep the ones with RA. Alright, I reckon that's a load of crap, to be honest with you. Look, if companies start laying people off, they're going to start laying off those that lazy, can't work, don't work. All right, if you've got a good work ethic, they'll always keep you on. Unless you're doing specific tasks, mate, you don't need RA in construction. All right. If you're going offshore, a lot of offshore places will require advanced rigging, but they'll also want dual ticketed advanced rigging and scaffolding. All right. That's purely offshore. If you're doing work in the entertainment industry, there's times where you may need advanced rigging. But as far as general construction, you don't need advanced rigging. All right. There are a couple of tasks that advanced riggers can do that are in construction, but they're typically done by advanced scaffolders, and I would only expect an advanced scaffolder to do it. So if I was going to do a drop deck scaff, I certainly wouldn't be asking the riggers to do it. I would certainly be making the scaffolders do it. Right? To me, advanced rigging in construction is a total waste of money. There was quite a long time there where companies were advertising for advanced riggers when they only needed intermediate or basic even. But that was HR companies confusing advanced with experience. Unfortunately, what they ended up with was a bunch of 18-year-old advanced riggers, which is one of my biggest pet hates. Look, construction intermediate, yes, most definitely. Demolition, building cranes, tilt panels, dual lifts, all come under intermediate. Definitely need that in construction. Advanced, swing stages, flying foxes, span lines aren't typically used. They are on some more very specialised jobs, but it's not something they're going to get the average Joe to do. Right? It's going to be done by something. They're tasks done by people who are more specialised in that area. All right. So to me, wasting money on an advanced rigging ticket isn't worth it at all. Intermediate, most definitely, and that's the reason I've been in the industry for, dare I say, nearly 25 years now, and I don't have an advanced ticket. And the reason I don't have it is because I don't need it. All right, I've never been asked for it. I've only ever been on one job where they required an advanced rigger, and there was a cracker change out at the Kwinana nickel refinery many years ago, and they set up a gin pole. Right, and it's the only example I can think off the top of my head where I've been on a job site where they actually required advanced riggers. And they didn't just get the riggers that were there on labour hire, they actually got specialised personnel to do that job. All right, so keep your money, put it towards something else. All right, definitely don't need advanced. Now, if a company is laying off people because they don't have advanced tickets, they're going to end up with a lot of very inexperienced people, because what you'll find is a lot of experienced people in the industry don't have it. All right, because there's no need for it. Intermediate is all you need. All right, and 18-year-old advanced riggers, always my pet hate. Okay, all right. So what else do we have out there? All right. So what I want to do, just talk a little bit about what we were earlier. I'll just switch over here. All right. Now, I hope that's come up here. All right. So, right here, well, I don't know how that's looking there. Well, I'm sort of judging over here. All right. Now, one of the things I was talking about earlier was pinning your outriggers. Now, you can see here, let's just bring that up. So, there's another example there. All right. Now, you can see here, he's got a very low boom. So, he's jibbing down, jibbing down, jibbing down. It's putting more and more weight on these outriggers on the side here. Now, if you don't pin your outriggers, these beams, they're not supposed to take any loading. All your loading is supposed to be on your jacks. But as you start getting close to your limit, starts to get a little bit of lean on it, starts putting force on the beams. They're not designed for it. The pins are there to stop it. So if you don't get those pins in, they're going to slide in and things are going to get really ugly. All right, so I will give you a hint. If you ever do a crane course with me, one of my biggest pet hates is not having those pins in. All right, so look, it takes 30 seconds to walk around and put them in. Don't be lazy, put them in. And you can go on Google at any time, look up crane accidents, and you'll be amazed how many you'll see. in that situation where the outriggers have just been pushed in. All right, so keep that in mind. Always make sure you pin those outriggers. All right, let's just swap back over to here. All right, oh, we're back over to the other camera now. Don't know, all this technology is getting the better of me now. Okay, Jaden, is it hard to get into tower crane erection in Melbourne? As I heard, you need a gold card, which you can't even get unless you work for specific companies. All right, so a couple of points on that. So building tower cranes is a task for intermediate rigging. All right, now, do you need a gold card? Well, legally, no. But what you'll find, especially in Victoria, you will require a gold card to get onto those companies. Now, they're typically specialised crews, and if you want to get into that field, you're going to have to look at the companies that own those tower cranes, because they're the ones that are going to be jumping it up. You might get to see all those tower cranes around the city. The blokes rigging those tower cranes and the blokes in the tower crane themselves, they're not the ones that are actually jumping them up and erecting them. All right, it's the crane owners, whoever they're renting those tower cranes from. They're the ones that send out the specific teams to jump it. So if you are trying to get into it, you need to start work with those companies anyway. And once you get in with those companies, then they can help you get that gold card. But in reality, as far as the legalities go, you don't actually need a gold card. All right. So Kevin Lees, what is a gold card? Look, a gold card, I'll put it in the same basket as the yellow card for the scissor lift. It's a nothing more than a competency. So to me, if you need a yellow card to drive a scissor lift, it is nothing more than a VOC. All right, there's no legal requirement to have it. It's just certain sites believe that you do have to have it, so they push that agenda. All right, there is no legal requirement. Same as a gold card for climbing tower cranes. There is no legal requirement to have it, but realistically, depending on what state you're in, here in Victoria especially, you'll need to give up, go get the card if you want to get in that field. Now, in that field, now I'm only guessing here because I don't know. I don't really have that much to do with tower cranes. I've usually been mobiles or crawlers. But if a company erects tower cranes, they're going to know that it's not easy to get. They're going to take on experienced riggers and then train them up to do it and then get their gold card. If they're just looking to get people who hold it, I think they'll be struggling to find people, all right, because there won't be that many of them out there. Okay, not all cranes have outrigger pinholes for full extension. Grove roughies specifically, they have a pinhole for mid-extension. Look, yes, I do know, and when you go to the new cranes, lead hair, vario base, there are a few different aspects to go into it. All I'm saying is, if you have pins, use them. They're not there for looks, they're there for a reason. Look, if your crane doesn't have it, if you've got vario base, whatever the case may be, then obviously you can't use them. But if they're there for the 30 seconds, what harm is it going to do? All right. If it saves you or the crane or anyone else standing around it, all right, you're better off taking time and just doing it. Remember, look, we'll go down to the old adage, must be set up as per man specs. So manufacturer specifications, I'm pretty sure that if they have outrigger pins, those specifications are going to say they must be in place. And if things do get ugly, what do you think they're going to go back and look at is how it was set up. And first question they will ask is, why aren't they there? All right. So not just to save yourself, but anyone else around you as well. Don't be lazy. Spend that time. Put those pins in. Because there are a hell of a lot of cranes that do have them. The majority of them do. So use them. Okay. All right. And look, it still amazes me the amount of operators out there, because I have been doing this a long time, and there are a lot of operators that just don't put them in. 30 seconds. Why risk it? All right. Okay. All right. So, do we have any more questions? Yes, no. All right. Well, to me, it sounds like, smells like dinner's just about cooked. So, if there's no more questions, I'm going to go and grab a feed. All right. So remember, if you're going to be going to do some, getting a little tongue-tied there. If you're going to do some courses, go back, have a look at some of my videos. They are all, well, the majority of them are based around students, to teach them the aspects of what they need to know in order to get through those courses. All right. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you know any mates going to do courses, let them know about it as well. All right. It's there to help everyone. All right. It's a free resource to try and help you get through those courses. All right. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you again in the next video. Thank you.
Do you have clothes for tomorrow?
Hey,
Do you have clothes?
do I have clothes?
Mm.
I'm pretty sure I've got shirts. Yeah. Why? Doesn't matter, Bob. I'm not in a hurry.